am your immigration attorney, Michael Fulwani, and once again we have with us my law partner, David Nachman. David, welcome.
Thanks so much, Michael. Always a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. So what is the agenda for today?
Well, Michael, I think we want to just carry on from our discussion.
I just want to say something to the viewers. Many times, David and we come here to do a program, and we don't talk about anything, what we'll do today. We just come and sit. And whatever comes to our mind, we just tell you. So that's why I asked you today's agenda on your mind.
That's fine, Michael. And matter of fact, Michael and I are always so busy talking about the traffic and trying to get through the traffic that we don't have the time to discuss what we want to discuss. But I jotted down a few notes, Michael, and I think one of the things which is sort of a carry along from what we discussed last week, which I think is really important, is to kind of give our viewers a glimpse about the priority date movement, because obviously in November there was a very interesting announcement by President Obama on November 20th and 21st.
Talking about executive action, right?
Exactly, the administrative relief that the president announced, and he specifically dealt with the visa process and how numbers were going to be counted. And there were two very important points that he made. And obviously, it's very interesting how that might segue with regard to our announcement last week about how the numbers were moving and what the predictions were. Because it's not often that we see the predictions being printed in the visa bulletin, is it? All of a sudden, we're starting to see predictions now. And this could actually be a form of modification of the visa bulletin. So, but let's talk about the 2 points that President Obama raised in his administrative announcement, his administrative relief announcement in November. Number one was that he said any unused visas are going to be used. And that was a big deal, because what would happen is if the visas weren't being used, they would go by the wayside and they were just being discarded.
In the garbage.
Right, they were discarded. And that's really not fair, because as it is, we have people who are clamoring for visas. And if, let's say, a visa is available and it doesn't get used and it goes by the wayside, that's not really fair. So basically what they're going to do is they're going to, number one, there's going to be a focus on the use of all the visas that are available. That's number one. Number
two. It makes sense also. It makes sense. Why throw away? Use them next year. They'll carry forward.
Well, they're tremendously valuable to someone.
Exactly.
Right? We know that they're valuable to someone. And number two is that what they're going to do is they're talking about possibly, we don't know how this is going to shake out, but possibly the visa numbers are going to be counted only toward the primary beneficiary and not toward the derivative beneficiaries. Now, if that happens, what that means is that pool of visas that's available, there'll be more visas in that pool, which means that there'll be more numbers available, which means that more people can draw from it, which means that, of course, there will be less retrogression. Now, in light of the numbers that we recently saw in the visa bulletin that we announced last week, it's interesting to see that EB2 is moving at a fairly rapid pace, at least more rapidly than it did in the past. And that's an interesting segue into the fact that President Obama also announced that the national interest waiver classification was going to be liberalized. That's an EB2 classification. And also the family-based numbers seem to be moving progressively. And that's also interesting from the standpoint of the president's announcements about family unity and the fact that families should be together. And what, you know me, Michael, I don't always subscribe to the theory of conspiracy, governmental conspiracy.
Okay.
But isn't it interesting in light of the announcements that were made in November that all of a sudden we start to see changes in the visa bulletin, and we start to see numbers moving a little more progressively forward. So it's very interesting to me that all of a sudden things start to be coming together, and I think politics is a little bit behind it.
Let me say a few words also.
Sure, of course. Yeah.
See, what David is talking about actually is a quota system. Now, there's one category which are the immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, parent of a U.S. citizen, child under 21 of a U.S. citizen, spouse of a U.S. citizen. They are not subject to the same type of quotas that we have for other categories. Rest of the categories, all the other categories, employment as well as family preferences, each category has a certain quota. In addition to that, also there's one other requirement is a per country limit. And that causes another problem for India, because per country limit means even if the visa numbers are available for many other countries, India that has reached the per country limit quota, and therefore you see this big difference between, for example, F-2B. F-2B is 2014 for other countries, and India still is
right. With the exception being cross-chargeability.
That is correct.
Right.
So what happens is that when a petitioner, like you are a citizen, you are filing a petition for your brother or sister, right? And that's when they count like this, okay? They count number one, your brother or sister, what we say a principal beneficiary. Rest of the family members are derivative. And who are the rest of them? It's a spouse or a child under 21.
Exactly.
So then they count.
And there could be many especially if you have a large family. It could be 6
people. So let us say
people.
that your brother, you file for brother. So he has a wife, number one. He got 4 more children, 5. So they count 5. So that's why the numbers get exhausted very quickly. But if you start counting 1, obviously I talk about example that I gave last time, a jar of candies, 100 candies in that. And you can only give, you have to give 4 to somebody, 5 to somebody, 3 to somebody. Within, very quickly all of them are gone, right?
Exactly.
But if that happens, what you said, then they are going to only one candy to the whole family, which means 100 families will come instead of 20 or 30. What will that do? Huge. This is huge. If the brother-sister category now we say is about 12, 13 years or 14 years, this could go down to maybe 4 or 5 easily.
Right. That's right.
So right. Some of the categories could become even current.
That's right.
So it's a huge, huge thing.
That's right. And it also has to be balanced against the possibility, which we announced in some of our earlier shows, about the possibility, because remember, S744 talked about the elimination of the family fourth preference. So we, as practitioners, we are often trying to figure out what the future holds, and we don't know. But we have to make sure, so for example, because S744 discussed the possibility of the elimination of family fourth, consider the possibility of going ahead and filing and not looking at it as, I'll never get that visa. Look at it as the possibility that if S744's tenets go through along with this advance that Michael's talking about, family fourth preference could advance fast. Exactly. And you could end up getting the visa in almost half the time, possibly, than you would not, then rather than sitting back and say, oh, I'll never get it.
This is exactly what you said. Some clients who come in and I say, they are talking about a brother or a sister. Say, I'm a citizen, why don't you file? They say, what's the point? 12, 13, 14 years down the road, there's no point.
Exactly.
So I said, there is a point. There is a point. It is very much possible that this plan of not counting the derivative members may happen. Correct. And if that happens, your brother and the whole family come in about 4 or 5 years. And some of the other categories will be very faster also. So I would say, I agree with David, that if you are looking forward to help one of the siblings or somebody, doesn't hurt. Just file an I-130 petition, put your brother and his family in the line.
It's a small investment for a long-term gain which can't even be quantified.
Agreed.
I want to make a couple of real quick announcements. Michael, number one is, we announced it in our prior show, but number one is, of course, we have a new Indiana office. It's downtown in Indianapolis. Please feel free to go on our website and take a look. There is an individual who is out in that office who'd be more than happy to meet with you. Right now, she is meeting with a lot of folks who have questions about U visas, about DAPA, about DACA, about the new provisional waiver, provisions that were announced by President Obama. Obviously, these are going to be implemented over the course of the next several months, but please feel free to give us a call and we can meet with you face-to-face out in the Midwest, which is Southern Ohio and Indiana and Northern Missouri. So feel free to get in touch with us. Also, for those of you who haven't already signed on to our website, please feel free to sign up for our e-zine, because while we do give on a weekly basis information to you which is helpful in the U.S. and Canadian immigration arenas, if you go online, we're giving that information out almost during the week. So you'll get that information as it becomes available from the government. I also want to make everyone aware, and I'm sure you already know or have heard about the H-1B season. H-1B season starts, the filing starts on April 1st. However, more than ever, we're trying to get everyone set up in advance because there are a lot of issues that the companies are having to make sure, number one, that the companies are properly registered, number two, that LCAs are approved in advance so it's not last minute. Because what you want to do is you want to get your H-1B filing to the USCIS by April 1st or within 3 days of April 1st. So it's very, very important. And my third announcement, which is something that Michael and I were kicking around in the car on the way over here, is that I am mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And that usually you don't hear from me because Michael knows me to be fairly low-key, fairly balanced and fairly low-key, but I'm very upset. I'm very, very upset about the horrible, horrible decisions that we've been seeing from the USCIS and from the U.S. Department of State within the last several weeks. And I'm not sure I know why these decisions are coming down, but what I can tell you is this, is that a lot of them are just dead wrong. They're wrong. The officers seem to be making horrible decisions. The information that needs to be that's put in as evidence is already in the record, and they're making absolutely completely wrong decisions. And so, Michael, you and I talked about
that. I want to mention about some actual case, real case.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do that.
Now, as you know, that we have been representing the film production companies, the whole Bollywood, for their film shootings and performances, and we do a lot of that. I mean, we never have a problem because we have very experienced staff and people, and we take our time to do the best we can. This recently we saw in one case, they say some stupid questions. It was a film shooting to be done by a film producer here in US, and I cannot mention the name of the company, you know, the client privilege.
But everyone would know the name if you mentioned it.
So that we didn't believe. My God, such stupid questions. There were a lot of documents that are asking again now, and we already gave it to them. A very stupid question, very stupid question. So it took us a lot of time and effort, but we got the case approved. So that's a good news.
Right, but Michael, we talked about why is this possibly happening, and one of the things we talked about is the possibility that maybe people who are working for the USCIS were trying to get back at the government or get back at the people who are applying because of the announcements that were made by President Obama. We also know that new officers are placed into duty in August, and that, you know, maybe they have bad training. That could be a reason. What do you think the reason is?
My gut feeling is most likely it is the new people, officers that come in. They have a very small, brief training. They have not dealt with a lot of these issues, but they are told in the training program that be very careful, watch out, there are frauds, there are this. You make sure that everything is there. So that's my first thing. Other elements could be there, some of them. I'm saying I cannot dismiss anything. But in the front of the line, I put that they should have more training, and the supervisory staff should look over some of these things.
I agree.
And somehow we should also try through our Immigration Law Association and other sources to bring this to the attention of the higher authorities.
And I know that Michael, you know, on his recent trip to India is going to be talking to the U.S. consular officials about this. I personally think that the takeaway for you as viewers is that if you get a bad decision in your case, question it and make sure that you bring it to the attention of a qualified immigration professional to see whether or not it's a legitimate decision. Because if it's not a legitimate decision, it should be challenged in some way, or you should refile your case.
That's correct. So that's very important, and you know, I think will be very useful to our viewers to listen. And again, as usual, we are running out of the time. We thank you very much, David, for being on the program.
Thanks so much, Michael.
And thank all of you for watching us for
I'll be
so
less
many
angry
years.
next time.
And please keep watching us every Saturday and Sunday at 11:45 a.m. Thank you very much.
Bye, friends.